welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this week's episode, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to interact with us and follow us, you can find us on Facebook at From the Shadows podcast or From the Shadows on Facebook. And how many times have I done this? Like 400 times, and I screwed it up. Or you can go to our forum page, After the Shadows. You can find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author. You can find us at From the Shadows podcast on Instagram, or go do it the old-fashioned way. Just go to fromtheshadowspodcast.com, hit the contact button, send me an email, and I will respond. Hopefully, if you want to share an experience and maybe be on the show, we'd love to hear from you. And if you don't want to email us, you can get a hold of us on any of those other forums and send us a message. So I'm super excited about today's guest. I've been waiting to have this guy on, not only because he has the best beard around. Okay, I'm just going to tell you, it's fantastic. Anybody who's watching this on YouTube is going to see his beard game is fantastic. Thus, his handle on TikTok as the Bearded Bard. Okay, and we'll get into that. But he has some great paranormal stories that we're going to get into, and I think you guys are going to enjoy maybe a little discussion on philosophy about what may be going on right now in the world with the paranormal. So, Josh, thank you for coming to the From the Shadows podcast and hanging out with me.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm really excited for this.
And, just back away from the microphone, really give the full beard. Oh, that is fantastic.
It's luscious today.
And I got to hand it, my wife would never let me grow that, even if I could.
Right. My wife will not let me cut it off.
That's fantastic.
She is very, very straightforward, said, you're not allowed to go back to having a short beard. Because when we were first together, I had the very close cropped beard. And now she's like, nah, no, don't do that again. Like, she wants me to keep it nice, but it's not allowed to be short or gone.
What a woman. My hat's off to her.
She makes my beard oil and my beard balm that I use, so it's even better.
Oh, it's a team effort. It's a real team effort.
Well,
so Josh, let's share with our listeners the story that I saw on your TikTok channel that really sounds amazing. Okay. I want you to share this with our listeners, and let's get into this.
All right. So I was working for a company doing road construction based out of Lewistown, Montana, which is the geographical center of Montana, smack dab in the middle of the state. And we were working in Medora, North Dakota, which is Teddy Roosevelt National Park. It's like a 5.5, 6 hour drive from Lewistown to Medora. And we had to make that drive every Sunday night and then every Friday night. So we would be going out to the job site. Sunday night, we'd be there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Friday, as soon as the job was done, we typically pack up and drive the 5.5, 6 hour ride home. Sometimes that was in the dark, especially later in the season, because we'd work well into October until the ground was frozen, sometimes into November. And this was, I think, mid-October, and we had got done on the site, I think, about 6 or 7 o'clock. So by the time I made it back into Montana, it was starting to, it was dark. So I'm rolling through, going down this highway, and I hit this little town called Circle, which I stopped in all the time. I made my gas stop, I got my snacks, and I'm going out, and Circle is in the middle of nowhere. Like, there are no lights on the highway. It's just dark. So when you're on the road by yourself, you can tell that you're completely by yourself. And I'm going along 70 miles an hour, just pitch black. I am the only vehicle that I can see in any direction. And I'm coming up this hill that curves to the right. And as I'm driving, I'm just kind of like, do. I just chugged a energy drink, so I'm like wired. I'm like, all right, I've got to make it home. I've got a couple more hours of driving. I can't get drowsy. We're making it. And my headlights hit something standing on the shoulder of the road on my passenger side. And I look up and I make eye contact with this thing. And my brain went, that is a Bigfoot. And like the logical part of my brain was like, nah, but I'm like, that is a Bigfoot. And he was standing on the shoulder of the road. And I say he because it was very obvious it was a he. Things were showing. But it was standing full upright, and it had a dead buck in its hands, like a dead deer. And it had its hand, one hand was on the back of the head underneath the antlers, and the other hand was under the chin. So it was like cupping the head and holding it like right at it where its sternum would be, just kind of holding it there, arms just a little bit out, and the deer was just swinging freely, like not touching the ground. So I don't know if you've ever been deer hunting. Deer aren't short animals, especially when you stretch them like nose to the end of their back legs. They're at least 6 feet long. And he's just standing there casually holding it by the head, and its feet are dangling at least 1.5 feet, if not 2 feet off the ground. So I'm just like, and it looks at me, and it just locks eyes with me. And as I go past, it kind of like raises its lip and shows its teeth, and I just, whoom, kept right on going. And I was like, that was Bigfoot. Oh my gosh, that was Bigfoot. What do I do? Do I stop, take a picture? Do I go, nope, I'm not bothering him. He's in the middle of dinner. He just caught dinner. I'm going to keep right on going and just go home, because that was the largest land animal I have ever seen in my life, and he already was not very happy that I interrupted him. So I just kept going, and I got home. I don't think I told my wife that night, probably because I was just so exhausted by the time I got home. But then I told her, and she was like, no, you didn't. I was like, yes, I did. I saw Bigfoot. I'm very, very familiar with animals, especially North American animals. I've been outside a lot, and I'm like, there's nothing that I could have mistaken this for. There's nothing. And she's like, well, it's a big brown thing. Couldn't it have been a bear? And I was like, I didn't say it was brown, because it wasn't. It was a dirty white, like an almost gray, off-white color. And he was just, I'm like, that's not a bear. And also, bears don't have thumbs. And also, bears don't have a flat face that can raise a lip and snarl. It looked like it wasn't Harry and the Hendersons, but that's the closest thing I can come to.
Wow. Plus, not only are deer long, but deer are kind of heavy to the point where you can't.
It's not a thing where you're just kind of like standing there holding it. It's not a fish that you've just pulled out. It's like if you're holding it, and he wasn't clutching it to his body, it was out, like he was kind of examining it type thing, just kind of looking at it. So like elbows would have been against his torso, but then his hands were just out. So I'm like, and it didn't look like he was trying at all. Like if I would pick up a puppy, that's kind of what it looked like. Just hold a puppy, just have the, oh, look, a puppy. And he's just kind of looking up and down. And all I could think is he was running that deer down through the fields, coming to that highway. Because there's trees like a couple 100 yards away, but there's nothing right on the edge of that road. And so I think he was like, that one's mine, and started chasing it. And when he caught it, I just happened to be coming up that road right at that time.
Wow. Or maybe he was the guy at the other end of the field, and somebody ran him.
Yeah, someone was pushing. Yeah.
Which is just amazing. It's just amazing to think about anything like snatching a deer with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't know. I mean, a bear, I'm sure, is going to tackle a deer right, or a moose, but just to snatch it and just, oh my gosh.
Because if it was a bear, I would have seen blood. Like there was no blood on this thing. I would have seen claw marks and teeth marks, and this thing would have been ripped to shreds if a bear had grabbed it. Because that's how bears do it. They just tear it apart until it stops moving. But there was nothing. This thing was intact. And all I could think was he reached out, grabbed it, and snapped its neck. Or he punched it in the head hard enough that it just was like, done. And I don't know what. But he just stood there holding it, looking at me like, you've interrupted dinner. Move on, mortal. And I'm like, yep, you got it. And I'm gone.
Now, did any of the other guys on your crew travel this road too? Or?
They do, but they're kind of speed demons. I was the one that was like, I'm going to conserve my gas. I'll go 70. And they're like, we're going to hit 95. And I was like, all right, I'll see you in town when we get there. And all of them had big old diesel trucks. They made it like a race every weekend to see who could get home first. And I'm like, one, don't have the money to blow on gas like you guys do. Two, have no desire to go that fast when all I have is a little car and you guys have got the big trucks with the cattle guards on front. So if a deer jumps out in front of you, you just kind of like boom and keep going. If a deer jumps out in front of me, my car's done. And I'm probably in the hospital.
So you weren't even in a truck. You all this time I'm thinking you're in a truck. Going down,
I was in a Toyota Camry.
Oh my gosh. No wonder you didn't feel like you should turn around. I mean,
no.
Like so let me ask, if you had been in one of those big trucks, would it have changed your mind about, I'm going to turn around and check this out?
Maybe, because I would have been closer to eye level. Like the top of my Camry, if I had to guess, when I went past him and like I couldn't keep my eye on him anymore, I don't think hit his waist.
Holy smokes.
Right?
Holy smokes.
I'm just boom. I'm like, that thing was huge. Oh my gosh. Like I could see his legs out my window, but nothing above the waist from when I passed him. But I had probably a good 70 or 80 yards of him in my headlights when I came up around the curve. And he's just so pissed. Just looking at me like, how dare you? Move on.
Well, yeah, because the way you describe that area, I mean, what are the chances that he's going to see somebody in a car?
Right. And usually he would be able to see something coming a long way off. So he would have been like, there's nothing. And like, that's why he chose right then to grab the deer, is because he didn't think anybody was coming. But my itty bitty little car was pretty quiet and I had just stopped in circle. So he would probably have seen me coming into circle, but then not seen me coming out because of the way the hills are. I don't know. It was just one of those times where everything fell into place at the perfect moment. And I was like, this is never going to happen again. I am never, ever going to see a giant gray Sasquatch on the side of the road holding his kill. This is insane. And I'm like, no one's going to believe me. Like, absolutely no one's going to believe me. And I was mostly right. A lot of people were like, nah, dude, you saw a bear. I'm like, I didn't see a bear. I've seen bears up close. Like, I've been feet from bears. This was not a bear in any sense of the imagination.
Now, so did you, speaking of that, did you tell the guys that you worked with what you had seen?
No, I did not. I was like, nope, I'm not getting teased about this. Absolutely not. I think I told one of them like a year later. And I was like, dude, I saw Sasquatch. He's like, no, you didn't. And I was like, yes, I did on the way back from freaking Medora. I saw him right outside Circle. He's like, are you sure you didn't see a bear? I'm like, come on, man. You know me. We've worked together. I don't really exaggerate about stuff that I see. Like, I tell stories sometimes, but like what I see is what I see. And he's just like, nah, I don't know.
So now, okay, so before that, what was your thoughts on Bigfoot? Like what did you know?
Was I a believer?
Yeah, was you a believer?
I was, from a very young age. I thought something was out there. I didn't know what. I just remember being very young in elementary school, actually finding a book in my elementary school library that talked about Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Yeti. And it talked about the Florida skunk ape. And there's a couple other things. And I was like, this is really cool. And I'm like, could this be real? And then it had pictures of the different famous footprints. It had some like slides of the Patterson-Gimlin footage. It had the so-called Yeti scalp that is one of the more famous ones from the Himalayan temples. And I'm like, there's some evidence here that would say that, yeah, these things are real and that they're alive right now. So what in the world? Like, how can I say that, no, they're not real just because we haven't found one? There's animals we haven't found in decades, and suddenly we find one alive just out in the middle of nowhere, or there's ones that we've never caught on tape, but we know they're there because the locals are like, yeah, he's over there. But the second we turn towards him, he flies away. It's this little bird, whatever. Or one of my favorite examples is the coelacanth, the armored fish. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
They thought it was dead millions of years ago.
Like 30 million. It was tens of millions a year. Yeah.
And then the Japanese fisherman caught one off the coast of South Africa and was like, yo, what's this? And they're like, oh my gosh, it's alive? He's like, yeah, I caught it. And they're like, oh, well, everything we thought we knew about the coelacanth is wrong. It is still alive and thriving. And to me, I'm just like, if we can go that long thinking something has been dead, what's to say that there isn't something out there that we haven't fully discovered yet? Like just last week, they found 2 new marsupials in Australia, I think, that are like mouse-sized.
Yeah, and you think everything that could be found about Australia would have been found, right?
Right.
It's contained. It's kind of,
Yeah.
But now, were those marsupials deadly? Like, could they kill you like everything else in Australia?
I don't know if they can kick you with the force of 1,000 suns, or were they venomous or anything. But yeah, it's just like, there's no way that I can say with utter certainty there is not an animal that would fit the description of Sasquatch out there. I think there's just too much evidence to say that they don't exist. I think a lot of people are a little bit iffy on what they actually are. Like, I don't think they're spiritual beings. There's a lot of people that do. I am not one of those. I think they're an animal.
And I was going to ask that. So you got a good look in its, in its habitat, so to speak, doing something that it does on a probably daily basis. What kind of process did you go through thinking about that, and like, how did it settle with you?
Well, just looking at it, it looked so natural. Just like that was what it was supposed to be doing. There was no doubt in my mind. I'm like, yep, he caught his dinner and he's going to go home and eat it now. But just looking at it, it's like, and he knew what I was, 100%. And just the glare he gave me was all the warning that I needed, that he knew that I wasn't going to come back. He was in his element, ready to go, and did not think of me as a threat in any way. I was a very insignificant moment in his evening. But just like looking at it, it's, there are some fakes that look really good. Like, you can go online and find fakes all the time. Well, I saw this face in the internet, and you're like, that's very obviously a mask. It's a good mask, but it's a mask. Looking at this, I was like, that's a living creature. And I am terrified of it.
Well, and besides, so you're already talking about a desolate road in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Who's going to go out there and get a fake deer and dress up like that just by the chance that somebody's going to come by?
Especially in Montana, where everyone carries guns.
Exactly. Or like, drives a great big pickup truck. Can you imagine that one
drunk hillbilly that's like, I saw him, we're going to get him. And they just turn around and boom, 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 down. I'm like, you're risking your own life at that point. No one's that dumb.
Well, there might be guys like the ones you work with the cattle guards that might say,
right,
I'm just going to swerve and get this. It's going to be a 2-for-1. I'm going to get a buck and get a Bigfoot, And
the prize money I get from this is going to more than cover the damage to my truck.
Exactly. So now you have no doubt. All the stuff that you thought as a youngster, you have no doubt. You've seen it with your own eyes. You're a believer, and you think it's animal.
That's I
do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did you ever do any research about the area just to see if there's other sightings?
Yeah, there is actually. I went to the BFRO website and checked, and I think at the time that I checked, in the last 8 years, there was 6 or something sightings in that county. And I'm like, that's a fairly high number. Okay.
Any similar to the one that you had? Like roadside sightings?
I don't remember. I think it just said sightings. I don't think I clicked on what the details were. I should have. Maybe I should go back and check that. But yeah, I believe it was 6 sightings in that county.
Well, and think about that. It is like you said, a desolate area for 6 sightings to get reported. Because for everyone that gets reported, think about how many that don't get. Because you didn't go to the BFR website and report yours, did you?
Nope, I did not.
No. And so there's number 7 that get, you know what I'm saying? At least.
It's that old hillbilly dude that's lived out there since he was 3 in the cabin that his parents built from logs they milled themselves. And he's like, yeah, there's one lives out back, but I don't bother him and he don't bother me. He has no reason to report anything, but he knows they're there because they've been there.
And you hear that a ton of times from people that just matter-of-factly, I know he's there. I don't mess with him. He doesn't mess with me. We have an understanding. Like, okay. Like, I mean, I don't have an understanding with the skunk that comes out of the field and messes. You know what I'm saying?
But I think there's a different intellect level between a lot of animals and Sasquatch. I think Sasquatch is a hyper intelligent animal, like right under us intelligence wise. And I think that's what keeps them so well hidden, is that they have said humans are bad. Every time we interact with them, we end up dead. Let's not interact with them at all.
And if we do happen to come along one, we're just going to scare them off or hope that they just leave us alone, or they're terrified of. And look, it's a learned behavior too. If they're live in family groups in certain areas, probably learn how people around there act. And you're right. All it takes is one bad experience with a human, and they're gonna totally understand. Let's stay away from that. So I mean, I think this is a great sighting. I think this is. I think a lot of our listeners are going to be like, "That's the kind of sighting I want." I want to see the roadside sighting where you get a good clear look and you just live to tell about it. You know what I'm saying? And because I hear a lot of stories from people who are on the ground face to face, and it changes.
Not where I'd want to be.
Yeah, it changes their life, and they're never the same. So I mean, I'm thankful that I ran across your video and got to hear this, because this is a great sighting. But so I know in the first time we talked, we kind of, I always ask everybody, so what else, anything else happened? And you had some very interesting stories that you said you would be willing to share with us. So let's explain some of the background, where you come from, and how this, how these experiences happened, and what you may have made of them.
Okay. So I grew up in a very Christian home. My dad was a pastor. My uncle is a pastor. I went to school to be a pastor. My brother and cousin did as well. Like, we're very much God-believing individuals. Our big thing, everyone's like, oh, what denomination? I'm like, we're not denominational. We love Jesus and people. That's about it. And so growing up, I've always had an understanding that the spiritual things were real. Like, I know there's a lot of Christians out there that just straight up say, I don't believe in angels and demons. I know it says it in the Bible, but I don't believe in those. And I asked them why. They said, well, it just seems too far-fetched. I'm like, you believe, if what you're telling me is true, that Jesus rose from the dead, turned water into wine, brought other people back from the dead, but you don't believe in the spiritual beings that Jesus talked about and talked to. And they're like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, you don't make sense to me. I don't understand. So I've always had this thing like, yes, demons are real. Angels are real. When I was very young, like 7 years old, my mom was pushing me on the swing. And I turned to her and I said, hey, Mom, I think you're going to have another baby. And she's like, no, you and your brother are it. Why do you think that? And I said, well, a voice came to me last night and told me in a dream that you were going to have another baby. It was going to be a girl, and we're going to name it Grace. My sister Grace just graduated with her master's a couple weeks back. And she was like, there's no way. And for the longest time, I was like, it was an angel. An angel told me that you were going to have a baby. I don't know why, but he did. And then, like always growing up, I understood that demons were out there and they wanted to hurt me. And maybe they weren't going to hurt me physically, but they were going to try and do anything that they could to get to me. So I wasn't jumpy like, ooh, demons in every shadow. But like sometimes I'd sit back and I'd go, something doesn't feel right here. And I'd say out loud, as I had been taught, Satan, you and your demons have no power over me. I've been washed in the blood of Jesus Christ. I command you to leave me in the name of Jesus Christ now. And I cannot tell you how many times when I did that, it felt like a window opened wherever I was. And just like, oh, all of a sudden I'm like nice and cool. And it usually was oppressive. And it was like, whoa, that was nuts. But I had two really crazy experiences in high school with what I would believe were demons. The first one, I had a band, and we were playing in a battle of the bands that we went to every year. Super fun, just a bunch of high school and middle school age bands from the area. We'd go to this one church that hosted it, and this church was huge. Like they had a separate building almost for their youth that was like the size of a high school gymnasium. But the bands, we got the rest of the building as like our green room, basically. I probably wasn't supposed to go wandering, but I did. And I'm just going to wander, and especially into the sanctuary because it was nice and quiet. And I could just go sit in there and be like, all right, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm getting psyched up to drum, getting ready. And one time, my best friend, Ashley, was with me. And we just went into the sanctuary, and we're walking around, and it's dark. No lights, no nothing. And we're just kind of walking around talking in the quiet. And I look over, and they have a big baptistry. And the baptistry is almost boxed in, like it's got a roof and walls, and then it's open on the front. And I look, and there is something on top of that baptistry. And I had been working in sound for my church for years, and I thought, oh, it looks kind of like a transmitter of some kind. Maybe it's a microphone transmitter, because I could see two lights. I could see a red one and a green one side by side, about a hand width apart. And I'm like, oh, that's an odd, like it was very, very dark. And I'm like, that's a strange shaped transmitter. It almost looked like something on their hands with their elbows spread out, like if you were in a push-up position all the way down with your head raised up looking straight forward. That's what it looked like. And I'm like, that's a very odd shaped transmitter. I don't know what that's for. Maybe it's a microphone. I didn't even think about it. And then we left. Turns out the next band was very, very bad screamo. So we're like, back to the sanctuary. Let's go. And we go in there, and I'm kind of looking around, and I look up, and that shape is gone. There's nothing on top of the baptistry at this point. And I'm like, no one came in here. Where did that thing go? Hold on, I'm going to adjust this real quick. Yeah. I was like, where did that thing go? Because it was just right there, and that's not something that would move. That's odd. And so we go up into the balcony, and we're kind of looking around, and we're like playing with the curtains on the windows. And these windows are super tall. Like they hit me about my sternum. And I've been 5'6.5" since I was like 15. So I thought they were tall, and they were huge, like 20-foot tall windows starting at about my sternum. But we turned, and we're standing up there in the balcony, and my friend goes, hey, do you see that? And we look down at the stage, and there is a flickering light. It looks like a flame floating in the middle of nowhere. Just in the middle of the stage, nothing underneath it, nothing around it. It looked like a flame about that tall, just flickering. And we're like, that's odd. I don't like that. That's making me feel uncomfortable. And like we moved around, and the light didn't move from that spot, but we could very clearly see there was nothing under it, nothing around it, nothing above it. And I'm like waving my hands. I'm like, is this a reflection of something? What in the world's going on? And we both were just getting this really odd feeling. I should mention my friend Ashley is also a very strong Christian. Like that's what made us mostly best friends, is we were two of the more Christian kids in our friend group. So like we understood each other's struggles, you know. So we leave, my band does our set, and we were the last band. So we're cleaning up, getting ready to go. And my car is parked outside that sanctuary. So we get all the stuff loaded in the trailer, and I'm giving her a ride home. And we're walking through the parking lot. There is nobody else parked on that side of the church. I parked there because I thought there was going to be limited parking, but I was wrong. There was so much more parking. So we're walking back over there, and our backs are to the building, and I'm just getting this feeling of like, it's more than the you're being watched feeling. It's like something wants you to experience pain. It's something malevolent. And I kind of look over at her, and she's like, you feel that too? And I was like, okay, let's get in the car. And we're walking. And she looks over her shoulder and goes, and I go, what? She responds, don't look. Obviously, I'm gonna look.
Yeah.
So I turn around, and those windows in the balcony, one of them, the curtain has been pulled fully aside. These windows were like 20 foot tall. You couldn't pull that curtain aside unless you had like a rod that you could reach all the way up and push to the side. And standing in that window was a face, and it was tall, and it looked almost like if you took a skull and just stretched skin over it as tight as you could get. The eyes were just black pits, and the mouth was a red slit, and it was talking, and it was staring straight at us. And I just went, oh my gosh. And we got in my car, and I turn it on, and it's a hot night because it's the middle of summer. So I crank the AC, and it's doing nothing. And we're driving through town, and this oppressive feeling is just getting worse and worse and worse. And it feels like someone has come up from behind my seat, wrapped its arms around my chest, and is just squeezing me. And it's getting hard to breathe, and it's getting oppressively hot in my car. And we're just sitting there in silence, kind of sweating. And I finally look over, and I go, hey, you mind if I pray? And she goes, not at all. Go for it. And I was like, God, we love you. We thank you so much for what you've done for us, the sacrifice of your son, Jesus. Satan, you and your demons have no power here. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. And it was like the AC had turned on, the oppressive force was gone, and we felt fine. And I turned to her, and I was like, you tell me right now what you saw in that window. And she was like, it was really tall. Its face reminded me of a skull with black pits for eyes and a red slit for a mouth. And I'm like, well, I am never going back to that church.
What do you suppose that was? I mean, so you think you're going into a church and you're not going to be faced with that sort of stuff. Like,
well,
what?
That's the thing. So many people think that churches are holy ground. They're God's house. God's house has not been God's house since he lived in the temple. And when the temple curtain tore, that was symbolism for God not dwelling in the temple anymore. Now God dwells in you because of the Holy Spirit. That's when Jesus died. So God no longer dwells in a building. He dwells inside you. So in my understanding, churches are not holy ground. They're just a building that happens to host where some people go and praise God.
That's a very, very good explanation for that, and as to why you would. I mean, and look, I guess if you're going to church, you're probably carrying some baggage with you that you want to release to God, and
Right.
Maybe you're leaving some of that stuff behind, for poor kids to come across,
Right.
And you wonder, since you guys were, are such strong Christians, if that's what drew that evil to you guys.
It was weird.
And you would think that it would be drawn to weaker people. But it's like, was it a game for whatever it was to see? I'm going to show these kids.
Well, see, in my mind, the devil's a general, and he's not going to waste his troops on weak places that offer him nothing. He's going to go for strongholds that, if he was able to take over them, would offer him an asset. And I'm not calling myself an asset, but I was a very, very strong Christian throughout high school. Um, like it was not.
Obviously, in your friend group, you said you were the strong. So you would have been an asset for your peers, for the devil to get a hold of.
If the devil can knock down one stronghold that's been opposing him for a long time, he's going to count that a victory. So maybe he's got other people working on the weak strongholds, and I don't know. It feels very egotistical calling myself a stronghold, but I was just like, and I looked at her and I was like, I didn't tell you what I saw. And she's like, nope. And I'm like, that is exactly what I saw. How did we see the same thing? And she was like, was it talking? And I'm like, yes, it was talking. And I talked to a friend of mine, and he says he's Christian, but a lot of the things he says after that do not line up with Christianity. And he starts rattling off different types of spirits and ghosts. And he's like, what you saw was a phantom. And I'm like, what? And he tried to explain to me how he's gone through all these Christian ghost hunting courses. He's like, what you saw was a phantom. And if it was talking, it was casting a curse on you. It's a really good thing you guys got out of there. I'm like, I think you're a little bit kooky. As I say that, as I'm talking about Bigfoot and demons, like.
Isn't there something in the Bible about casting stones? I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Splinter in your eye, log in the earth.
I mean, okay, so wow. So that is pretty terrifying. No matter what, no matter how you slice it, that's pretty terrifying. So how do you kind of digest that and keep going? Just you tell yourself, we faced that challenge and came out on top, or what? Pretty
much. And it's like, I've talked to my friend about it maybe 3 times since that happened, and that was in 2008 or 2009, and I think we've spoken about it 3 times since, because neither of us really like to go back to that, because it's just like, that was one of the scariest things I've ever laid my eyes on. I don't think I was supposed to see that, but I did somehow, and I don't know how, but it wasn't natural. It was not from this world. And
you say that
our stories have changed.
Well, and you say that, and it's funny. You definitely, when you said about Bigfoot, it looked completely natural, like that's where it belonged. There's a distinct difference between this experience and that experience in your mind and how you digested these events. Like that was something that was not natural that you were supposed to really see, which, wow. So, okay, so what else have you, I mean, geez, I mean, I don't know if my heart could take this. I mean, seeing Bigfoot's piece of cake now after hearing that.
I'm just like, yeah, whatever, big hair dude, that's fine. I did have one other one in high school. A freshman girl, my senior year, reached out to me on Facebook and was just like, hey, I'm so-and-so. And I was like, hi, so-and-so, what's up? And I'm just like, what do you want? And I'm already on guard. I'm like, senior dude, I'm over 18. She's a freshman. Like, I'm not getting in any kind of trouble for this. And she was just like, you're a Christian, right? I'm like, yeah, why? And she's like, well, can we talk about that a little bit? Sure. Why not? I invited her to church. And are you familiar with FCA? You ever heard of that?
No.
It's the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. It's just
FCA.
Yeah.
I was the president of FCA.
Yeah. So I invited her to FCA and to youth group and stuff, and I think she came a couple times, but she would mostly just message me on Facebook like, "Hey, I've been thinking this. What do you know about X, Y, and Z? And what do you believe about this and that?" And it was always just very, very upfront, like, "Hey, this is what I believe. This is what I've been shown. This is what I've come to through my own studies." Because, like, I've always been that kind of guy that I'm going to dive into something. I'm diving in, and I'm going to know everything about it. And I think that's because my dad always teased me. He's like, "Hey, Josh, you have ADD." And I was like, "Are we going to get me checked?" He goes, "Nope." And now, being an adult, I'm like, "Oh, hyperfocus. That's what I was doing my entire childhood, is I would hyper focus on things and just learn everything I could. So I just vomit just info vomit anytime I could. So with her, it was just, hey, here's what I believe, and here's some stories from the Bible and stuff. And then over the course of time, she told me that she was actually a Wiccan, like a practicing witch. And I was like, okay, I've got friends of all shapes, colors, sizes, doesn't matter. I'm best friends with the Muslims in my school. That doesn't bother me. Just don't try and get me to do Wiccan things. Like, that's it. We can be friends. And she was like, well, I'm going to go to the graveyard tonight, and I'm going to take pictures of the spirit orbs. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, spirit orbs, because I don't believe in ghosts. I believe ghosts are something else. And so when she's like, I'm going to go take pictures of spirit orbs, I'm like, you're going to take pictures of lens flare is what you're doing. So have fun with the lens flare, whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. And then she messaged me that night, pretty late, like 10:30, and was like, yeah, I'm here. I don't remember how that conversation started, but she was like, the spirits are mad at me. And I was like, okay, for what? Because I'm talking to you. And that stopped me just right there. I'm like, why would the spirits be mad at you for talking to me? She goes, it's because you're a Christian. Oh, that set off so many warning bells in my head. I'm like, because I'm a Christian? What? Oh, no. These are not ghosts. These are demons who are mad that she is speaking with someone who actively opposes them. And that night, she left, went home, and was fine. She went back another night, and I told her, I was like, I don't think you should go do this. I don't think you should be going and messing around in the graveyard at night, taking pictures of spirit orbs and messing with spirits. I just don't think you should. And she was like, no, it'll be fine. And then she messages me while she's there, and she's like, the spirits are really angry at me. I have to stop talking to you. I'm like, about what? And she goes, no, just everything. I'm not allowed to talk to you anymore. They're hurting me because I'm talking to you, so I can't talk to you anymore because they're going to keep hurting me if I do. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like, she's like, they're hurting me right now. And I was like, do you need me to come get you? And she didn't say anything. I didn't hear from her for like 3 days.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So what did she ever explain any further?
Nope. She blocked me on Facebook. I think I saw her when I was home from college once, like 3 years after that. And she was still wearing the very, very stereotypical 90s goth getup, you know, like the straps and chains everywhere and the fingerless gloves. And I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? And she was just like, hey, and I'm like, how you doing? She's like, oh, I'm fine. And that was basically the entire conversation. She just like wouldn't talk to me.
So is that, and this is just speculation, is that somebody who has basically given themselves up to whatever demonic presence and just kind of said, okay, I'm gonna follow you instead, like being hurt?
I think she was in too deep. I think she was playing with things far above her pay grade, and she let them control her. Yeah, I do. I think she was just like, all right, well, I'm going to do this because it's fun and exciting and it's an adrenaline rush, getting pictures of these things. But then being a practicing witch, like, you dive more into the spiritual side of things. I know a lot of people say that witchcraft isn't real. I will 100% say that witchcraft is real. Again, biblically, it is. God says, don't mess with witchcraft. He wouldn't tell you to mess with something or not to mess with something if it wasn't real. If it did not exist, there would be no use to have a warning against it. So God straight up says, have nothing to do with witchcraft. That tells me not only is it real, it's something I don't want to play with at all.
Wow. So when we kind of touched on this a little bit, that and I wanted to get your take on this. And this is something that I told you I was kind of messaging back and forth with Wes from Sasquatch Chronicles, trying to get some insight from what all the stories all of us hear. Okay.
Mhm.
And I had a conversation this last weekend with a gentleman who his theory on all of this is that these are nothing but like the ghosts that you're talking about, the spirits, the alien abductions, any of the abominations, whether it's Dogman, the Wendigo, any of that sort of thing, that's nothing more than a demonic entity trying to convince us that other stuff is out there
Right.
that so that we kind of look away, like the alien part, for instance, that if we can somehow believe that God is really an alien and that's what we are descended from is alien, and that's what in the Bible they're talking about, is that
Right.
they just didn't know, they just didn't have
They
another
didn't have a
word
word for
didn't
it.
have a word for it. And then things that we've been hearing is um, that people who have been experiencing or in the middle of what they think is an alien abduction have invoked the name of Jesus Christ, and all of a sudden the entity stops, backs away, and disappears. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts and beliefs are on the possibility or the reality of any of this.
So I'm a very firm believer that I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts at all. Um, and one of the things that another biblically, this comes from my faith. I believe the spirits of the dead are where they're going to spend eternity already, and they don't get to come out. Like they're there. They don't do anything else. There's a very story in the Bible. Um, King Saul, right? Saul or Solomon? I think it's Solomon. He goes to a witch, the witch of Endor, and he says, "Call up the ghost of Samuel the prophet." And she says, "Okay," and then does it. And Samuel shows up, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, this was not supposed to happen." And Samuel's like, "What are you doing?" And was pissed and was like, "What in the world are you doing?" And that gives you a lot of context clues. That witch said, "Okay, like it's no big deal. I'll call up the spirit of this dead guy for you," like she does it often. But then when an actual spirit of a dead guy showed up, she was surprised and scared. Almost like she's not used to actually bringing up the dead, but bringing up something that would masquerade as the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And if demons can be anywhere and we can't detect them, much as I believe other spiritual beings can. Like God, if what the Bible says is true, God is here, we can't see him. I think angels can also be here unseen. Demons don't age as far as we know. So they could literally have been with a family since that family's inception, gaining all of this knowledge. So how easy would it be for a demon to be like, "I'm your grandpa," and you're like, "Tell me something only grandpa knows," and it tells you stuff that only grandpa would know because it was there when that happened to grandpa. It just makes sense to me, especially since Satan is called the father of lies. His entire thing is make us not believe that God and Jesus are who they say they are. His entire job is to deceive us and turn us away from that. So what could he do to make that seem true? Make it seem like ghosts are a real thing? Because if ghosts are a real thing, there's probably not an actual like afterlife as in heaven or hell type thing. Um, like aliens. If aliens were real, that brings up, did God create aliens? Because it basically in Genesis says that God created the earth and that's where he put life. If God would have created other life, wouldn't have said so in Genesis? Because that just makes sense. But if these other beings have all this power, would that actually put God on a godly pedestal? Or like you said, would he be an alien? Because if God's an alien, God's not God. So in my mind, Satan is just using all of this to be like, haha, God's not God, and he's trying to bring people down. I think that most of what people see that they would attribute to ghosts or extraterrestrials are simply demons masquerading as those to make it seem like God and Jesus are not real.
I mean, and that seems to be like there's a lot of people in that camp that believe that,
No.
I mean, and there's a lot of people that believe the other side of it too. It's interesting to, and that's why I wanted to hear what your thought process and your belief were behind that. So when it comes to like experiencing Bigfoot, do you suppose, and this is completely just us throwing stuff out there, that there are times where maybe a demon senses that somebody really wants to see Bigfoot or really wants to, and it presents themselves as that make them let their guard down, maybe create some fear, create some doubt, and can use that because if a demon can come to you in any shape or form, why not do that too? I just because you hear a lot of stories where people, and I go back to Wes, he just had a guy on who saw something and then felt like the thing followed him home and was messing around in his house. Well, that doesn't sound like, I mean, I have no doubt what the guy saw because he had some video
Oh, wow.
He had some video that was kind of compelling, but then the other part did not sound like Bigfoot at all. Like he came in the sliding glass door and was messing around, and the guy saw his door was open and something screamed at him from inside the house, like he had experienced out in the field while he was farming. Okay, and it's like,
gosh.
So do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like he had a real physical experience, but what did he have a physical experience with? Was it something that was that the demon, or was the demon nearby and said, you know what, I'm going to pick up on his fear, follow him home, and mimic some of the stuff he just experienced with his, in reality, and blur those lines for this guy when
it very biblically it says God has not given us a spirit of fear. And when you look into like things like Dogman, no one has a good experience with Dogman. None. Not a single one. There's a lot of experiences with Bigfoot that can be like, oh, that wasn't bad. Some of them even can be good. Like I read about one, actually, no, I think it was, I might have heard it on Sasquatch Chronicles with Wes. I can't remember. But a woman, her husband, and her daughter crashed into a drainage ditch and they were going to drown. And a female Sasquatch with her baby on her back jumped onto their car, ripped the back window out, and pulled them all out of the vehicle, saving them.
Wow, I've never heard that. I've never heard that one.
And it might not have been Wes. I can't remember. I've read so many different freaking things. But yeah, this one was like, yeah, this Sasquatch saved us from drowning. She ripped out the back windshield, pulled my daughter, myself, and my husband out of our sinking car and set us back on land before jumping off the car herself. And her baby was on her back the entire time watching us. And I'm like, see, that doesn't sound demonic to me. Demons don't save people. That's not what they do. They're here to make you afraid. So when people start getting afraid, I'm like, what's more frightful than a ghost? Because I'm not going to lie. I love watching ghost shows. I love it. It's such a guilty pleasure for me. Like Nuke's Top 5. Oh, that is my drug. I love that stuff. Just watching those, and I just watch it. And to me, the more I watch, the more I'm like, demons are really good at this. Like they're really good at making people terrified. Because I do believe that people are messing with stuff out there that they shouldn't, especially when they pull out like the spirit boxes and they're like, do you have anything to say to me? And the spirit box is like, I'll kill you. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't an accidental little static thing in the air. That was very clear. And I don't think a lot of these people are hoaxing. Some absolutely are hoaxing, but I don't think a lot of them are. I think they're messing with demons, and demons are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, is inspiring fear and doubt in the human population.
Well, I can tell you one thing that I have no doubt about. I have no doubt that anybody that's listened to this episode and listened to what you've had to say definitely has to have, anybody listening with an open mind definitely has a lot to consider. And I think I would encourage people to go and do more studying and research on all aspects of it. And the more knowledge you have on all of this, the better equipped you are to, get the information and process it. And I mean, because in the grand scheme of things, you are strongly convicted, what you believe through a lifetime of experiences and studying. Some people may not have that, and they don't, and this may be foreign to them. I've had my experiences, I've had how I was brought up and stuff. And, I share some of your views and some of your other views. I'm like, well, I don't know. I need to,
right. Yeah.
And it's not that I'm saying anything's wrong. It's just, we all need to get to our conclusions a different
right.
path. I think we all have a different path. And I love hearing everybody's point of view and their beliefs. And, especially when it comes from a kind of a pure place where you're not up screaming at people like, this is not,
I've never,
yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Even like being a Christian, I hate those street evangelicals who are just like, you're going to burn in hell. I'm like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You're just turning people off.
Yeah. But no, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing I love the Bigfoot story, and I love this other part, because like I said, I've been having some conversations with people about that, just because it seems like it's coming up more and more.
Right.
And
wait till you dive into Nephilim.
Oh, jeez. Jeez.
Oh, have you heard of the Giants of Kandahar?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Man. Oh, Nephilim is one of my favorite freaking Bible subjects, and now that it's becoming more mainstream, someone brought it up the other day. They're like, you heard of this Nephilim? And I was like, have I heard of the Nephilim? Oh, boy. You have no idea what you just did. And I just proceeded to unload for like 30 minutes, and they're like, you know a lot about Nephilim. I'm like, yeah, I do. It's because it's fun. And they're like, where do you find all this stuff? I'm like, everywhere. I'm a sponge for information. And like that stuff becoming more and more happening, or like they're saying, oh yeah, all these Native American tribes have stories of red-haired giants that ate them, that they drove into a cave and killed. I'm like, that sounds a whole lot like Nephilim.
Exactly. And the stories are from all over. And
they're not centralized in any way.
And it goes back to when somebody's telling you at the beginning, you said, well, they said, I don't believe that it's far-fetched. But if you believe in the Bible and that's what you study, it says it right in there.
Right.
Okay? So they are something, they happened somewhere, somebody wrote about them for a reason,
Yeah. Like Behemoth and Leviathan. Those are biblical. They sound like dinosaurs.
Yeah. Yeah. And then but there's people that say dinosaurs didn't exist. So
right. But we have the bones. Well, that was planted by Satan to test your faith. I'm like, that's stupid.
Well, Josh, I appreciate you coming on, and I wanted you to tell everybody where they can find you on TikTok, because you got to go follow Josh on TikTok. This content up there is fantastic, and you guys have a little business. Well, I shouldn't say little.
Uh-huh.
You guys have a business. You guys do some really cool stuff. I want you to tell everybody about that.
So my TikTok is The Bearded Bard. I started out as a D&D content creator, and I am now an everything that I feel like creator. I do a little bit of D&D. I do woodworking. I do farm content. I do voice acting. I do, like, you name it, and I do it. My biggest thing right now is reacting to the horrible life hack videos that are out there and just picking them apart. And that has got me a lot of really interesting content and a lot of death threats too. That's always fun. And then my wife and I have our own business that we do woodworking, and we ship all over the world. We've shipped, I think, almost to every continent. I know not every country, but I'm pretty sure I've shipped to every continent in the world other than like Antarctica. and we do woodworking for the home. And now I'm starting to get more into like prop weapons for stuff. Like I just made this sword the other day. Yeah, it turned out very well. It's very hard to see in the light, but
it's fantastic though.
So I'm doing more and more stuff like that. But we do like baskets for vegetables and your chicken eggs and like shelves for your chicken eggs. My wife does these really fun signs that you can hang on your door that say like, unless you have wine or Amazon packages, go away. Alexa, rake the leaves type thing. So just goofy little stuff that we like to do. And I'm trying to do more in the voice acting realm, and just kind of expand more to where I can continue to be at home and work. Because we live out in the boonies, and any job that I would drive to right now is a bare minimum 30-minute drive no matter which direction I go. And I like being home with my family and getting to teach my kids all these skills. Like I have most of my children working with power tools already, to the point where certain power tools I can say, you know what to do, go ahead and do it. And I have no fear at all that they're going to be okay. But it's nice just being able to be home and do stuff with my family and still make a living.
I think that is that's the American dream right there. And I will say that a man with a beard like yours deserves to have a sword like that to wield.
I actually have the William Wallace replica.
Oh,
yeah. It sits in my shed, and every once in a while, when I'm feeling that I need a boost, I'll just pull it out and walk around with it. If you've never just walked with a sword in hand, it is the biggest pump to your freaking ego ever. You're just like, I could take on the world right now. Yeah.
I think I need one of those on the mail route, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Just pull out a sword. Someone's like, you left my mail. And you're like, excuse me?
You said what? How dare you? And keep your dog inside. Well, Josh, hey, everybody go check out the Bearded Bard on TikTok and just go from there, because that is real entertainment. It's some great stuff. It's funny. And I just encourage you to go check him out, support him so he can stay home and do more cool things and doesn't have to worry about running into Bigfoot out in the middle of nowhere. But Josh, thank you so much for coming on. I've enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to see the response for some of the stuff that we talked about. I think it's going to get people talking for sure.
It's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited for it.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.